I be on the go. And it ain't no drink out there that can numb my soul. Oh no. And all we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is break the chains off, man. All we wanna do is be free. All we wanna do is be free. All we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is take the chains off. All we wanna do is be free. All we wanna do is be free. Can you tell me why?
So tell us just a brief synopsis on who you are and how you got to where you are here today.
Well, I'm the Chief of Police at Concordia University, Texas.
During the Vietnam War, I was wounded in an ambush. It had a great impact on my career.
I plan on teaching middle school children. I want to teach these kids about life. Like, I didn't get that.
Sociologists were concerned about those larger issues of race and class in all we do.
Have honor and responsibility and to respect others. Have a work ethic to do your job.
Again, it's very important that police officers have good public and community relations with the public. For example, if I know you and you know me, you look at me as James Fladell, the police officer, not just a police officer, although we have something in common. So we have mutual respect for each other. I think that plays an important part on policing.
Are you familiar with the Mike Brown case? And if so, how did you hear about it?
It makes me sick to my stomach. Let's say with everything going on, and these are just the things in the headlines. These are the things that we actually know about. I mean, there are things coming out every day. Ever since this Mike Brown thing, honestly, he's a murderer. He shot somebody, and there are no consequences. He shot somebody who was unarmed. And when he called it in, he didn't report it. I mean, if anything, suspend him for a breach of protocol just because he didn't report the guy that he just shot.
Describe what elements did you feel were more justice and what elements were more injustice?
At Mike, particularly, had he complied with the police officer, initially when they made contact in the street, all the way up until the point where the incident actually occurred, I personally feel that the officer would never have had a reason to draw his weapon, let alone fire his weapon, and take a life. An example I'm going to give you is that a lot of times the public is not aware of this, but police officers do fear for their lives also, even though we carry weapons and badges. But sometimes we're outnumbered, and we react because we're human. Now, in this particular case, what I do know, I believe Mike was about 6'4", close to 300 pounds, and the officer appeared to be, from what I've seen on TV, maybe 6 feet at that height, and maybe 160, 170 pounds, which meant that even though Mike was 18 years old, he was much larger than the officer. And that's why it's so important for anyone to comply with the police officer.
Oh.
In other words, you should never argue with the police officer when they give you an order, whether you like it or not, because we have to have law and respect. And definitely never engage in a confrontation where it becomes physical.
Indeed.
After a cop shoots, he fires his weapon, what is the protocol for that?
You call into the dispatch, get them out there. Usually the police chief would arrive.
Have you ever had to draw your weapon?
Yes, I've drawn my weapon, but it's every peace officer's hope not to have to draw his weapon, especially not to have to use it. There was an armed robbery in progress, and he stared at me, and I stared at him, and he didn't fire, and I didn't have to fire. Thank God for that. So,
Wow. So I've been doing the shooting, and Mike Brown was left on the street for 4 to 5 hours.
He should have called in. When you're looking for suspects, you know, you're radioing in. I've been in a few chases, and you're trying to let people know where you are because you don't want to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. You don't want yourself to get where somebody has an advantage over you. So you're trying to let them know wherever you are all the time. And if that's the facts of the matter, then he should have called in.
You equip a police force with people like him, and you're not protecting anyone. You're tearing down the very structure that's supposed to help us. Nobody wants to call the cops anymore. If something goes wrong, people are scared to call the cops because they're going to get in trouble. I mean, for no reason at all. I mean, the people in Ferguson were boarding up their businesses a week before this verdict even came out, knowing this guy was going to be acquitted, knowing that Ferguson was going to burn again. When your own people know that your justice system is going to fail a week before it even fails, that's embarrassing.
Last time I heard about it was on the news. We can't ask Mike Brown anything about that day or what he was thinking or, why he would have done this or that, that we think transpired.
Very interesting.
This is not an isolated case, that we see similar patterns in terms of, in particular, interactions between the police, often white police officers, and young black men. And in many other cases, just recent cases, where the young men have been unarmed and yet they've been killed in the process. And so it raises a lot of really important questions.
As a retired officer, what is it that you want to be remembered as?
The legacy I would love to leave is that I was fair. I was a good person and he was fair.
Yes.
From time to time, I will meet or see inmates, folks I've had involvement with, that were either incarcerated for whatever reason. They will come up to me and say, "Excuse me, Mr. McGill, you remember me?" And that's a good feeling.
That is amazing.
As a teacher or as an educator, what can you do for your students to prevent situations like this, similar to the Mike Brown case?
Those are the minds that I'm cultivating. That's where I'm planting a seed. And to see them getting gunned down in the street by the people who are part of the structure that is meant to protect them, to keep these kids in school, serve and protect. What happened to that? Yeah. I mean, when did that stop existing? The kids that I want to help get through that part of their life are being gunned down in the street. It's disgusting, and it breaks my heart.
How did you digest it as a sociologist? What take did you have on it?
Pictures of Mike Brown, and that they had sort of picked out pictures that maybe caused him to look threatening and project a certain image. And we see general patterns of people being treated differently on the basis of race. We see more sort of attention being paid to, when it comes to at least some offenses, being paid to people of certain racial and ethnic groups compared to others. An example, going back to Ferguson, that we've heard cited in the media a lot, but is the reality that we have an almost white police department, right? And a largely African American community.
The news media does a real good job of reporting at the beginning, but then they kind of fall off and they don't really report the whole story. And I think that's what some of the problems come in when they don't report those stories. That's when you see the riots come out and those kind of things, because they're not reporting the facts. All they say is, "Oh, the officer got off." Well, what were the facts in the case? Tell us what the facts are. And I think if they would do a better job of that, we wouldn't have as many riots as we do.
A lot of people say that what happened there was savage. The way that the community responded to what happened to Mike Brown was savage. And that lighting fire to their own communities, throwing bricks through their own communities' businesses' windows, things like that, it was passed off as less than human behavior. Yeah. That disgusts me as well, because how do you expect these people to react? When the people who are meant to uphold the justice are the ones that are committing the crimes, what do you have left other than to burn everything? I don't see it as savage. What the officer did to Mike Brown is savage. When the people who are meant to protect you are the ones gunning you down, that's the real barbarians.
There was a lot of reaction that was very peaceful, that was people just sort of speaking out, right, and wanting to be heard and create awareness. And there was, in some cases, pretty strong, aggressive police response. People feel disempowered. Sometimes the way they respond is through violence or through lashing out, or kind of a reaction to feeling like they're blocked.
That's a very, very good perspective. Would you say that fear plays into it? Do you ever wonder, are you going to come back home? Or what is it that goes through your mind when you're getting dressed and you know that you're about to go out on duty?
And I really don't think about the ultimate that I'm going to lose my life. I think what they prepare us for is that we're going to go home that night. No matter what happens, I'm going home tonight, and I'm going to do whatever force I have to make sure that I go home that night. And as long as you prepare that mind, that set, I think you're going to be okay. I have a strong faith in God that He's going to see me through most things, and even if He doesn't, and not that He wouldn't, but if I have to die that day, everything's going to be all right.
Wow.
We all feel like when we leave home in the morning or at night, whichever shift you're working, you want to return home the same way you left. You want to return in one piece and healthy and unharmed. So you make a lot of quick, split decisions. You hate to take a life, and you hate, but at the same token, you value your life. So you just have to be very alert and hope and pray that you do the right thing.
This goes right back to the kids and the people that are now like recording their encounters with cops to expose it. Because I mean, okay, so if all these exposures come out, if we do some math on it, what do we say? Like 10% of cops may be like untouched by corruption? So these 10% are paying for the 90% that are just robbing society of protection? It's my job to want to keep these kids alive. And I thought I had law enforcement's help in that. My version of helping a child and the version that I've been shown law enforcement believes is helping a child is not the same thing. I want to cultivate some sort of passion for life in these kids, a want for themselves, betterment. Do something better. Get out of here. Get out of the ghetto. Get out of the inner city. Do something. Or save the inner city. I don't know. But I don't want to lock them up. Mistakes don't mean you get shut down.
Your plan is to pretty much challenge these structures of our newer generation when they're at that tender age of, you know, kind of figuring out what they want to do and creating their own structures.
Mistakes mean that you need some encouragement in a different direction. It doesn't mean you get shot. You get pulled over, you get shot. It means you get pulled over, you get a ticket, and you move on, and you learn from it. I worry for situations because as an educator, someday I'll run into situations where kids are on drugs, and I want to help them through that. But if I notify authorities, that kid isn't going to get help through that. That kid's going to get locked up. That kid's going to get punished when that kid is still a kid.
Do you mind explaining the mental chemistry or the makeup in the mind behind the cop and citizen relationship? And can it ever be copacetic?
There's a potential to misuse power, right, under certain social conditions. And
Yeah.
we need law enforcement, but also we know that they are given a great amount of power. They're given the power to take someone's life.
Really?
Most police shootings happens when the public doesn't comply with police officers. I don't think it's any police officer, or very few if any, that just really want to pull his weapon and take another person's life or shoot a person. At the same token, the public have to realize that we're human and that we have families and values just like they do. And again, we want to return home safe at night. So when we ask you to do things, it works better for us and you and everyone when you comply with police officers.
We need to comply, and we need to hold our responsibility on the end of the cops and compliance from the citizens.
So the way society is kind of labeling it today, they say that cops are in a gang. And what's your take on that?
I don't believe we're a gang. I know where that's coming from. There are some police departments that have gotten, I believe, out of control.
And can you just expand a little bit on the type of training that you went through when you were in the academy compared to how it is now? I've been informed that there's some type of military style.
We get a lot of our recruits now come from ex-military. And what they do in the military, we can't exactly do in our lives. I mean, they go over there, they have to take control of the situation, they have to sometimes get physical with people more often than police. You know, one of the things I've always leaned to is my old chief used to tell me that, you know, we've all heard the term protect and serve. Okay. Well, when that term first came out, it was serve and protect. And the service became first, and then you were to protect people. And that's where I believe that you have to get into, is being that service-oriented department.
What do you feel like can be done to change this type of gang relationship that the citizens sometimes feel towards or feel threatened, or the fear towards the cops?
Sometimes in our line of work, police get very where it's us against them. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not us against them. Just in any profession, there's good teachers, there's bad teachers, mm-hmm. there's good cops, and there's bad cops. And so we have to look at those situations and we have to weed those cops out.
It's good to have the training when you need it, but sometimes you don't want to be excessive. You don't want to go overboard. Let's say a traffic stop. You don't want to take a traffic stop and have it escalate to deadly force. But if you have to use deadly force, obviously you need to be trained to know how to do it.
How else is this country going to get better? I mean, I'll take the pay cut. I'll take one for the team as long as I'm doing my part to get us where we need to go. Because where we're going right now is nowhere.
How unselfish of you.
Our country has entirely lost its sense of unity. And that's kind of what I want to culture in these kids. Some sort of sense of, yeah, I'm me and you're you, but we can be us and we can do something about this. This country has no idea that it can get out of this pickle. We're absolutely unaware because we've been trained against it.
So what advice do you have to the citizens dealing with racism, injustice, or justice, or just how the citizens are kind of feeling towards cops lately?
Talk to my family a lot about this is, Martin Luther King wanted everybody to get along. White, black, and I think there's fault on blacks, and I think there's fault on whites. I think there's faults on Hispanics. I think there's all kinds of faults because I think there's certain people that try and divide the country because I think that's their advantage in doing that. But I think what we have to do is get that we respect everybody. And I think y'all's generation's a lot better than my generation and the generation that's past. We realize that everybody's God's children, and God created us all and put us all on this earth and made us all equal.
And any last words that you have for the cops?
We have police officers that are in the profession for the right reason to be in the profession, and that we weed out the ones that are racist, and that we get everybody to understand that I'm going to treat them no matter what's been done. I'm going to treat them according to what the law says, and that we get the racism out of there.
Are you giving up on the older generation?
My parents are pushing 70. They have given up on it. There's some kind of mental construct in their head. They didn't want to meet my roommate when I moved in down here in Austin, and she was black, and they were uncomfortable meeting her. They were uncomfortable meeting my mixed friend as well. That hurts.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It doesn't make sense to me. Like, coming from where I came from in our generation, I cannot wrap my head around the fact that somebody could be less just because of the color that they are. Like, I can sit in a tanning bed for a week and be darker than my mixed friend, but I'm still white, so I'm okay, and she's not. That just doesn't, I don't know if, I was just born without that mechanism in my head, and I was raised in a racist family, but I just never caught that disease.
So what is a structure in the mind that causes one race to see another one as, I guess you could say, inferior?
So it becomes an issue when we exploit difference for gain. And once people do that, I think then they have to have ideas about inferiority and superiority that serve to reinforce their actions. You dehumanize another group, or if you can somehow make arguments that they're in need of civilizing by another group, or whatever it is, right? Then that can justify your actions. Children into certain ideas and have certain messages, and then that goes on to affect the way we distribute rewards and opportunities, because now we've got these ideas about people, and it kind of becomes a feedback loop.
I never thought of it that way.
It's a disease, it's an epidemic. When epidemics occur, the later generations kind of find vaccinations for them, and they don't happen so much.
Pretty clever. I never thought of it being considered a vaccination to cure this disease.
I'm just going to be a vaccination.
If you were happening to pull over a person of Caucasian descent versus pulling over someone that was African American or Asian, expand on some of those experiences that you had with that.
I stopped an elderly Caucasian gentleman, about 82 years old, and I asked for his ID, he refused to give it to me. And it escalated to the point, I tried everything I knew, it escalated to the point where we became physical. He physically assaulted me. Therefore, I had to restrain him. But he was 82 and white. And at the time, I was like in my late 40s and black. Well, when it was all said and done, I ended up losing my job. I was terminated because little politics got involved in it. He was a wealthy contributor to one of the campaigns. And he felt like I had no business stopping him, approaching him. And that all came out at, during the case. And some folks just don't like police officers.
He is more than just a cop. He is also a father. He is also a husband. He is a grandfather. He is a friend. He is a deacon. And most of all, he wants to be remembered as fair.
And have you ever experienced racism? In uniform, out of uniform?
As you know, my wife is black.
Okay.
So I think I'm one of the people that wouldn't be racist out there. Okay. Ever so often people will accuse me of being racist to them. And I've been accused on this campus of being racist before. And I take great offense to that.
Okay.
Because I don't think I'm a racist. I believe I try and follow the law. And whatever the law states is what it is, and I don't try and, just because of the color of a person, I shouldn't treat them any different. I was always taught by my dad to treat everybody the same way, and to treat them, from the janitor that cleans the toilets to the president of a company, you treat them the same way.
Wow.
So you can see the kind of passion I have about people calling me a racist, and I take great offense.
This color thing, I'm over it. It's getting old. I mean, we've worn it out, we've pushed it. Let's just talk to each other. Let's just open the conversation. And that's the best I can do. That's where I'm going to play my part. So I'm going to open that conversation in a younger generation so that hopefully this whole thing just gets eradicated, and someday we can look back and say, man, that was a whole lot of nonsense.
So after several cases and situations happening similar to Mike Brown, or just, like I said, that cop and citizen relationship where you have a higher power and a citizen that needs to be protected, what do you feel like can be done as a society? What changes need to be made?
It's easier for people to keep certain ideas.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess people from this group really aren't good at that because I don't ever see them in these positions, right? Mm-hmm. But once we see people in different positions, it challenges some of those ideas. If you have more African American officers, particularly in leadership, how does that change things?
Mike being a black young man, he may have reacted differently toward me than he did toward the other officer, who was Caucasian. In a situation like that, it's always good to have officers that can identify with the neighborhood. But of course, in this case, I think the amount of police officers they had, the majority of them were white, opposed to being African American.
Well, there you have it, people. We all justify with different type of judgments that we already have that are preconceived. It just has to be challenged. That's what it comes down to.
Change is going to happen. Okay. We can either make it easy or we can fight it. I'd rather just go with the flow. I mean, let's enjoy it. Like, let's celebrate it. I mean, I know that sounds overplayed and really teachery of me.
So do you have any last words about the case or just about this ongoing issue of race?
Seriously, we're all so cool. Like, there's a lot about all of us that none of us know about each other. Let's just talk about it.
Amazing. Well, this has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much. You really made my documentary, and I really, really appreciate you taking out the time. We need to challenge these structures of our new generation, not necessarily giving up on the old, but we got to start at that tender age. Change can happen. Thank you.